Yo guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. And today I've got another good one for you. And this is an especially good video if you are a softie. And by softie, I mean that you like soft shoes. Because today we are doing a shootout between the Mizuno Neo Zen and the ASICS Novablast 5. Let's get into it. Before we get started, I do just want to say that Mizuno was good enough to send me this pair of the Neo Zen for the purpose of review, and ASICS was good enough to send me this pair of the Novablast 5 for the purpose of review. However, no one has told me what to say. No one has any editorial privileges, and all the thoughts and opinions are my own. With that said, you're going to be able to pick up a pair of the ASICS Novablast 5 for $140 or the Mizuno Neo Zen for $150. And of course, I'll place links in the show notes below in case you want to pick up either or both for yourself. So right off the bat, we know that there is a $10 difference. The Neo Zen is $10 more than the Novablast 5. Now, although these shoes are very comparable, there are some distinct differences that are going to tilt you one way or the other. So let's get started with the Mizuno Neo Zen. And the Neo Zen has 40 in the heel, 34 in the forefoot for a 6mm drop, and the ASICS Novablast 5 has 41.5 in the heel, 33.5 in the forefoot for an 8mm drop. So 8mm drop, 6mm drop. Now in a US men's size 9, ASICS claims that the Novablast 5 will tip the scale at 9 ounces even, or 255 grams. However, in my size, a US men's size 13, the Novablast 5 will tip the scale at 10.7 ounces or 303 grams. Moving over to the Mizuno Neo Zen. In a US men's size 9, Mizuno claims that it'll tip the scale at 7.9 ounces or 224 grams. And in my size, a US men's size 13, it'll tip the scale at 10 ounces even, or 283 grams. The Mizuno Neo Zen is 20 grams lighter than the ASICS Novablast 5. So right there, it depends where you put your value. If you're looking for the least expensive, obviously the Novablast 5 is the way you're going to go. If you're looking for a lighter option, the Mizuno Neo Zen takes it by a fair amount. 20 grams isn't nothing. Now we're going to continue with the differences by starting at the top and working our way down on the Neo Zen. And the Neo Zen is featuring a one-piece knit upper. And it seems to me that a knit upper is quite a polarizing upper for a shoe. Some people love it, some people don't like it. But one thing's for sure, the upper on the Neo Zen is insanely comfortable. Because it's a one-piece knit upper, there's no actual padding around the heel collar, but it's a super soft knit. The heel counter, you know, there is a little bit of rigidity. There is an underlay coming right around the heel, but you can still press it down like that. It is fairly flexible. However, if I hold that up and you see this angle coming in, the heel counter area of the Neo Zen does give you a good heel lock. I didn't experience any heel slip, and overall the whole lockdown of the Neo Zen is very good. And just quickly, if we look at the back of the shoe, there is a heel pull on the Neo Zen, which is 100% needed. A lot of the times I don't think a heel pull is necessary. In fact, there is a heel pull on the back of the Novablast 5, and I don't know, like it's really not needed. On the Novablast 5, it's kind of a want to have rather than a need to have. On the Mizuno Neo Zen, this is definitely a need to have, because with this one piece knit upper, the shoe can be quite tight to get your foot in. Because everything's so soft around this heel collar and heel counter, it makes it so much easier to just grab onto that heel pull and wrench the back of the shoe over your heel. It works well. Now, on the other side of the coin with the Novablast 5, this is a very typical daily training running shoe. Oh, and before I go any further, I should tell you that both of these are daily trainers. Fairly light daily trainers, but they're daily trainers nonetheless. These are the shoes that you are just going to load up with miles, and they're going to be comfortable for most of the runs that you do. Okay, so as I said, on the flip side, from the Neo Zen, we have the Novablast 5, and look at this heel collar. It's super plush, very padded. Now, I don't know how you feel about such a plush heel collar padding, but generally I'm not a fan. I like to see it a little slimmer than this. However, you can't take away that a lot of padding leads to a lot of comfort, and the Novablast 5 is still very light. I think ASICS is really focusing on comfort with a heel collar like this, and it works. It's a very comfortable shoe. Now remember, we had that fairly floppy heel counter on the Neo Zen. On the Novablast 5, the heel counter is extremely rigid. So if you find that a rigid heel counter is something that you need to stop heel slip, then the Novablast 5 may be worth looking at. As far as overlays go, yeah, there really aren't many on either shoes, but the ASICS Novablast 5 has less. The ASICS logo on both the lateral and the medial side are both sublimated. We have an underlay coming around the toe box, and then there is just a little bit of reinforcement coming along the eyelet chain. The lower 4 eyelet chains, or lower 2, but 2 on each side, being a shock cord style lace loop. And then it gets to be more traditional as we come to the top. If we come over to the Neo Zen, yeah, it's a lot more of a traditional lacing system, at least traditional when you consider it's a knit upper. And with the overlays, we have the Mizuno running bird here on the lateral side. On the medial side, it's nice and big, but it's super light. It's really not adding much weight at all. And then we have a little bit of reinforcement coming around the toe box. And then of course that knit upper just has different knit patterns within the upper to give it a little bit of structure. And you can really see that, because if it didn't have that structure in the knit upper, the whole upper would kind of just collapse on itself. And we can see that it is standing up nicely. Let's talk about sizing just quickly, because the ASICS Novablast 5 does fit true to size in a way. And the Mizuno Neo Zen, I think you really have to go down at least half a size. In fact, I think I could probably go down a full size in the Neo Zen and I wouldn't run into too many problems, but definitely half a size down in the Neo Zen. Now, I say true to size sort of with the ASICS Novablast 5, and that's because it is a very high volume shoe. And this is where the Neo Zen and the Novablast 5 really compare well because they're both very high volume shoes. Now, typically I don't have a very high volume foot, so when I put my foot into a shoe like the Novablast 5, I am cinching those eyelet chains close together. It does feel like that when my foot is in the Novablast, if my foot was to swell ridiculously, my foot would still fit very well inside the Novablast 5. The same thing goes, if not more so, with the Neo Zen. Now, because we've got a knit upper, there is a lot less room to kind of manipulate the upper and make it fit your foot. So if I hold this up, you can see that knit upper is kind of overlapped there in the middle, right in the middle of the eyelet chain. So of course it's a one-piece knit upper. When I pull it around my foot, there's nowhere for it to go because it's just one piece in the middle. On the Novablast 5 and a more traditional running shoe, you can see that the two sides of the upper have room to meet in the middle, and then the tongue is underneath them to stop the lace bite. On a knit upper, you get rid of that extra room, so the material has to bunch in the middle. While I'm typically not a fan of having my knit uppers kind of overlap in the middle, I can't actually say that it made too much difference other than looking at it and seeing that it's overlapped. Like, I don't really like how that looks, but from a performance, from a use perspective, I didn't really notice any difference. I definitely did not get any hot spots on the top of my foot, which by looking at it, I would think that I could. No, the Neo Zen is super comfortable, even though this upper is very high volume. Now, as far as the tongue goes, of course, there's nothing to say about the tongue on the Neo Zen because it's a one-piece knit upper. There is no tongue. It's a thin knit material. Now, there is a piece of rubber right here on the front, so when you tie the shoes across the top of your foot, that knot isn't going to create pressure on the top of your foot, so good design choice there. And the tongue on the Novablast 5 is a lot more traditional. It's quite thin. It definitely is not as thick as you would think by just looking at this heel collar, and there is more than enough padding to stop any lace bite. There is a tongue pull / lace loop running down the center of the tongue, and the tongue is gusseted. So let's come down to the midsole. And the midsoles, although they are different, they're on different shoes, this is another thing that makes these two shoes very comparable. Now, in the ASICS, we are using Flightfoam Blast Max, and that is a new foam in the Novablast line. Remember last year they were using Flightfoam Blast Plus Eco, and Flightfoam Blast Max is just a little more responsive and a lot softer, which is important when we're comparing it to the Neo Zen because the Neo Zen is using Mizuno's Energy Next foam, and this is a supercritical TPU foam. Again, it is very soft. Now, when I'm walking around, I'd say the Mizuno Neo Zen feels quite substantially softer than the Novablast 5. However, these are running shoes, and it's unlikely that you are going to be walking around in them. Right, you're going to be taking these out for a run. But even though the Neo Zen does feel softer when you're just walking around, when I take the durometer and I make a couple of measurements here on the heel, it's still the same, 25.5, 25. Now let's come over to the Novablast 5. Try again on the back, 5, 25. It's almost surprising. As far as the durometer reading goes, these two foams are very close to identical in softness. And yet, when you are just walking around, not running, when you're walking around, the Neo Zen feels a lot softer. So let's talk about the ride. Because the ride of the Neo Zen, it's quite adaptive, in my opinion. Like when I'm running really slow, it feels soft. Then as you start picking up the pace, it's almost like the compound firms up a little bit to make running at speed a little easier. No one wants a really super soft shoe when you're running fast. I think Mizuno has done something well with the Energy Next foam because it allows you to run slow and have a soft ride, and then it firms up as you get faster. The Flightfoam Blast Max in the Novablast 5 is a little more traditional in the way that there is no really noticeable change in the durometer as the run starts. It feels firmer than the Mizuno Energy Next at slower speeds, and it's very similar to the Energy Next at higher speeds. In fact, I did take both these shoes out with one shoe on each foot, and it was very difficult to tell the difference between the two shoes when I started picking up the pace a little bit. They are both somewhat responsive and provide a soft ride. Okay, we'll come back to ride in just a second, but let's just come down to the outsole rubber. We can see here on the bottom of the ASICS Novablast 5, ASICS is using AHA Low, and also up here on the forefoot, ASICS is calling this, it's trampoline inspired. So when you roll through your gait, you're going to be bounding off like you're on a trampoline. I don't know about that. I mean, it feels soft like a trampoline, but I don't know if it's throwing me forward like one. If we look at the bottom of the Neo Zen, we can see we have a good amount of outsole rubber coverage, and it just seems when I'm running that this rubber compound on the bottom of the Neo Zen feels slightly softer, at least in comparison to the outsole rubber on the Novablast 5. As far as wear goes, the wear on both of these shoes are almost identical. I'm getting just a little bit of grazing here on my lateral heel edge, although I have had the Neo Zen quite a bit longer than I've had the Novablast 5, and I'm surprised I'm not seeing more wear on my lateral heel edge. I'm seeing a little bit of wear up here on my forefoot of the Neo Zen, which obviously that's going to be from rolling through and towing off, and then on the bottom of the Novablast 5, Yeah, it looks like I'm seeing a little bit of wear right up here on the trampoline area. But what I am impressed about on the Novablast, again, same with the Neo Zen, is how much little wear I'm seeing on my lateral heel edge. Yeah, it looks good. I am seeing a little bit of wear here on this exposed midsole foam. That's just where this center cavity just collapses when my foot hits the ground, and then that outsole rubber just touches the ground and grazes it. That's not going to make a difference to performance. So which shoe is right for you? The Mizuno Neo Zen or the ASICS Novablast 5? And let's just pretend they're the same price, because I think there are some differences that make the Neo Zen worth that $10 premium over the Novablast 5, and that's especially because of the weight savings. But as far as the upper and the ride goes, both these shoes are going to appeal to runners that like a softer ride. If you favor a firmer ride, I am going to steer you away from both of these options. They're not for you. If you like a nice protective feel in your daily trainer, a ride that is smooth and not too aggressive, then both of these are going to be a good option. I think if weight is your primary concern, then obviously the Neo Zen is going to be the one to pick. And if you are not a fan of a one-piece knit upper, I think the Novablast 5 is going to be the one that you should pick. But either way, I can say with confidence that whichever one you choose, you are going to be enjoying your run in these shoes. So now I want to hear from you. If you run in either the Neo Zen or the Novablast, now this is the first year of the Neo Zen, but this is the 5th year of the Novablast. So if you've run in a previous Novablast, how do you feel about them softening up the foam? And of course, if you don't already have them, are you thinking of picking up a pair of the Mizuno Neo Zen or the ASICS Novablast 5? But for now, it's Matt B. This has been a shootout between the ASICS Novablast 5 and the Mizuno Neo Zen. Be kind, be happy, run well. See you in a couple of days.